Hi, I'm Kaylin. For 6 years, I was the one who showed up, paid the bills, covered the debts, filled the fridge, soothed their pride. I was the safety net they never thanked. And then, one night, a fire swept away everything I had. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I went home. Shivering from the cold, standing on the porch of the house I'd basically funded for years, I looked my mother in the eye and asked if I could stay for a few nights. Her face didn't even flicker. "This isn't a shelter," she said. That was it. No hesitation, no room to soften the blow. And that was the moment I realized I'd only ever mattered to them when I was useful. So I stopped. I cut every penny, every auto deposit, every unspoken promise. By morning, my phone buzzed so hard it nearly cracked the nightstand. 69 missed calls. But by then, it was already too late. Before I get into what happened next, let me ask, what would you have done in my place? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. I still remember this one Sunday. I was maybe 12. I spent the whole afternoon folding dinner napkins into little maple leaves. I'd watched a YouTube tutorial, even ironed each one so the creases looked real. I placed them carefully around the table, hoping, just hoping, for a smile. My mother glanced down, barely even looking. "Why do you always have to overdo everything?" she muttered. Then she called Camille to bring the dessert. She praised the pie. The napkins were forgotten. It's funny how moments like that never really leave you. Now the house was gone. I parked 2 blocks away because the road was still taped off. The fire trucks had come and gone. The air stank of wet wood and something darker, like memory charred into smoke. The beams that once held the living room jutted up like broken bones. The porch had collapsed inward, and the white paint, once so quaint, was streaked in gray ash across bricks that used to feel like home. The house I'd paid for, the one they lived in rent-free, while I squeezed into a studio apartment 4 miles away, just in case they ever needed me. Mom used to say I was too independent. No one called me. Not when it caught fire, not when the Red Cross came, not when the insurance guy showed up. I called them. Mom answered on the 3rd ring, sounding like I'd interrupted a nap. "It's all gone," she said flatly. The fridge, the china set, Camille's photos, nothing left. I waited for the part where she said, "Thank you for keeping the insurance active," or "Thanks for wiring the premiums every year." Instead, she added, "Camille thinks it was faulty wiring. We told you years ago that place needed work." I drove back to my studio to find the hallway underwater. A fire in the next building had triggered the sprinklers. Again. My carpets were soaked. The air was thick with mildew. I stood there, dripping, for 2 hours, until my knees gave out and I sank to the floor. No one to call, no one who'd come. So I drove to Upper Saddle River. The rain made it worse. Icy, relentless, personal. By the time I pulled into the long stone driveway, my jeans clung to my skin like they were stitched on. I barely remembered to take the keys from the ignition. I rang the bell. My mother opened the door, half in shadow, arms crossed. She wore a silk house robe, expensive, cold. The foyer behind her glowed with warmth. Camille stood by the kitchen island in a cashmere wrap, swirling a glass of wine. She looked right at me, said nothing. "I just need a few nights," I whispered, "until I figure something out." My mother exhaled, sharp and slow. "This isn't a shelter, Kaylin. You're not some refugee. I just need time to find a new apartment." "Ask one of those charities you donate to," she said with a vague wave behind her, "or one of the cousins you covered tuition for. Try using all that generosity for yourself." Camille didn't move. She just tilted her head like she was watching a rerun she'd seen a dozen times. I didn't beg. I turned back into the rain. The cold clung so deep it started to feel like armor. I sat in my car, engine off, windshield fogging. Raindrops, or maybe tears, slid down my cheeks. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nobody came. Nobody texted. 2 weeks ago, I sent Camille $1,200 for an emergency vet bill. Every Thanksgiving, I bought the groceries. I paid for Dad's cholesterol meds for the last 2 years. Quietly. I pulled out of the driveway slowly, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know where else to go. By the time I hit Route 17, the thoughts in my head weren't even thoughts anymore. Just facts rearranging themselves into sharper truths. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd deleted me. I was useful, until I wasn't. Until I showed up wet, cold, and asking. Behind a dingy gas station, I found a motel. The man at the front desk didn't blink, just slid the key across the counter like it was normal. The room smelled like bleach and something lemony, like the motel was trying to pretend it was clean. I didn't take off my shoes, just lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. My eyes stayed open long after midnight. Not from fear, from clarity. At 4:12 a.m., I picked up my phone. One by one, I logged into my accounts. Bank of America, Chase, PayPal, Zelle. I disabled every card, canceled every automatic payment, paused every transfer tied to anyone but me. I stared at a monthly deposit labeled household, a payment I'd been sending to my mom's account for years. I deleted it. Each click felt like shedding skin, like ending a contract I never agreed to, but had lived by anyway. I've been their backbone, I said aloud. My voice sounded strange, calm, clean. Now let's see how they stand without one. Just as the sun began to rise, my phone lit up. 69 missed calls, and it was only the beginning. The first thing I heard that morning wasn't birds or cars. It was my phone vibrating so hard on the nightstand it nearly danced itself off the edge. I didn't even need to look, I already knew. I sat up slowly, bones aching from the lumpy motel mattress, and glanced at the screen. 69 missed calls. 18 from Mom, 22 from Jace, 11 from Camille, a scattering from Dad, Cousin Lizzie, even Mrs. Felton, the neighbor who once borrowed my crock pot and never returned it. Dead center on the screen, the most recent message previewed. Kaylin, call me right now. Don't you dare cut off the mortgage auto pay. Not, are you okay? Not, where did you sleep? Not even, I'm sorry. Just panic. Over money. I let the phone slide off the blanket and onto the floor. The air in the room was stale, but I breathed easier than I had on my mother's porch. I lay back for a moment, staring at the stained ceiling tiles, letting my muscles slowly unclench. For the first time in years, the silence wasn't lonely. It was honest. No one called me until the money stopped. That said everything. Eventually, I got up, turned off all my notifications. I wasn't interested in the pleading, not until they learned how to speak the truth out loud. I showered with what the motel offered, a soap sliver the size of a hotel mint, a towel that smelled like bleach and despair. Still, I emerged clean, clear-headed. I pulled on the cleanest pair of jeans I had, a black tee, and the navy blazer I'd stashed in my trunk out of habit. It still faintly smelled like lavender, left over from a client meeting last fall. In the mirror, my reflection looked tired, but not broken. By 9:20 a.m., I was pulling into the parking lot of a co-working space I hadn't visited in over a year. I used to donate a few thousand each quarter to support the place, quiet corners for freelancers, graduates building apps that never launched. I'd never used the space myself, until today. The receptionist looked up as I walked in. Her eyes widened slightly. Kaylin? Wow. Haven't seen you since the panel talk. You want a desk? I nodded. Yeah, that'd be great. She didn't ask why I had no laptop bag, no briefcase. She just walked me to a window seat and gestured like she was offering a lifeline. That small act felt more like family than anything I'd gotten in the last 24 hours. I pulled out my tablet, connected to Wi-Fi, and got to work. Quietly, methodically. First, the shared family phone plan, gone. Then, I logged into the trust fund, the one I built with the help of a law school friend years ago to protect family assets. I removed myself from management. No warning, no explanation. Then came the car lease, Mom's second car. The silver one she deserved because she said she'd given up so much to raise us. The lease I'd signed in a moment of guilt? Canceled. I didn't smile, I just breathed. I was flagging a fourth automatic payment, Dad's magazine subscriptions and satellite radio, when my phone lit up again. A call. Jace. This time I picked up. Kaylin, he said quickly, voice tight. You've made your point. Now stop this. She said it, I answered calm. What? She said it, while I stood there dripping wet and homeless. He was quiet for a beat. She panicked. She's old school. You know how she is. I didn't respond. Jace continued, voice shifting into something rehearsed. Camille told me about the house. We thought you were stronger than this. That stopped me cold. You knew? I asked. When did the fire happen, Jace? Night before last. Funny, I only found out yesterday, when I showed up to ash and rain. He hesitated. I thought Camille told you. Look, we didn't think you'd break like this. There it was. We didn't think you'd break. Not we forgot. Not we're sorry. As if I were a vending machine that malfunctioned. As if needing help made me defective. I ended the call. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just stared out the window of the co-working space at the trees swaying in the breeze. That was all I needed to hear. I wasn't forgotten. I was invisible, by design. I spent the next hour at the bank. My longtime manager, Eric, greeted me with his usual calm nod. He didn't ask questions, just led me to a private office. He knew. Maybe not the details, but he knew. Every financial document I had once created to help my family, he helped me dismantle. Quietly, respectfully. When I stepped back out into the gray afternoon, something inside me had loosened. Like I'd unbuckled a belt that had been digging into my ribs for years. I stopped by a food truck on the corner, grabbed a tuna sandwich and a black coffee. No music, no radio, just me and the road. Back at the motel, I sat on the bed, opened the sandwich, and didn't eat. The room still smelled faintly like bleach and lemon. I looked around at the crooked lampshade, the carpet that hadn't seen a vacuum in months, the ancient TV bolted to the wall. And I picked up the napkin that came with my sandwich, folded it, just like I did all those years ago, into a tiny maple leaf. I placed it gently on the pillow, not out of nostalgia, out of instinct. This time, I wasn't hoping anyone would notice. I wasn't part of the family, I said aloud, voice low and even. I was the funding model. I lay back, fully clothed, letting the quiet settle around me like a warm coat. Just before I drifted off, the phone buzzed. A single text. Camille. No apology. Just 6 words. And you should know Mom lawyered up. Camille's text came in just past midnight. I was lying on the motel bed, the heater humming on and off in that stubborn rhythm, when the screen lit up. They're spinning it already. Watch your back. And don't come by. That was it. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I didn't know. Not even, are you okay? Just a warning. Dry. Detached. It wasn't solidarity. It wasn't a change of heart. It was a memo from someone still sitting at the table, letting me know that knives were now pointed in my direction. Like I was a coworker about to walk into a boardroom ambush, not her sister. I read it 5 times, then turned the screen off and stared at the ceiling until morning. After brushing my teeth with a travel brush I picked up at the gas station, I sat down at the tiny desk wedged into the motel corner. My laptop connected to the motel Wi-Fi with a single flickering bar. That was all I needed. I opened the browser, typed in the name of the local Facebook group my mother used to post in every Sunday, usually updates about Camille's volunteer events, or photos from Jace's real estate closings. And there it was, pinned to the top. And prayers up for the family on Sycamore Drive. They've suffered enough, losing their home, their support system. No one deserves this kind of betrayal from within. I felt my chest tighten. Below that, a stream of comments, in particular, stood out. I heard the daughter who'd been funding them just cut them off. No warning. Heartless. I guess some people forget blood ties when the money runs dry. I stared at the words for a full minute. Then I closed the laptop. Because it wasn't a surprise. Not really. Not after Camille's text. Not after the front door that didn't open. Not after the silence that followed the fire. They needed a villain. And I was convenient. The daughter who was too independent. The one who didn't show up for enough dinners, didn't drop everything to babysit. The one who paid, but didn't perform. I wasn't useful anymore, so they rewrote the story. I wasn't the one who paid the mortgage after Dad retired early to pursue a novel he never started. I wasn't the one who kept the lights on when Camille switched careers for the 4th time. No, I was now the saboteur, the traitor. I needed air. I threw on my coat, grabbed my laptop, and stepped outside. The chill hit sharper than I expected, like even the air had chosen a side. I walked without direction, boots smacking the pavement in a steady beat. My hands clenched the laptop too tightly. Before I even realized where I was headed, I was standing in front of the public library. Warm inside, quiet in a way that felt like safety. I moved to a corner window seat, opened my laptop, but didn't type. My hands just hovered. Kaylin? I looked up. It took a moment to place her. Gray curls now, but the same sharp cheekbones and clear eyes. Aunt Liza. Mom's cousin, technically. Never close, never cruel, just observant. I thought that was you, she said softly, holding 2 paper cups. You look tired. I let out a small laugh. That's generous. She handed me a cup without further comment. We moved to a side room meant for book clubs and tutoring sessions. No small talk. Just that same calm presence. After a moment, she said, Your mom used to talk about you all the time. I raised an eyebrow. She said you were distant, cold even, too practical. I blinked. Even when I bought her that car? Liza nodded. Especially then. She used to say, Kaylin doesn't hug, but she'll hand you the keys to Alexis. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I thought she was proud of me. Oh, she was, Liza said, but proud of your usefulness, not your heart, never your heart. She took a sip of tea, then looked me square in the eye. She liked saying you were the responsible one, but that was just code for the one we can lean on without guilt. Something cracked open in me. For years, I thought if I just kept giving, quietly, consistently, they'd finally see me. Not for what I did, but for who I was. Their daughter, their sister, family. But they never wanted my love. They wanted my labor. The lie they told themselves and everyone else was that I was distant, selfish, cold. But the lie they needed most, the one that kept everything smooth and easy, was this: that I owed them. That love meant giving without limit. That any boundary was cruelty. I thanked Aunt Liza for the tea. She didn't ask me to explain, didn't offer advice. She just saw me. That was more than I'd gotten from my own mother in years. The late afternoon light was soft by the time I stepped outside. I wasn't crying. I wasn't planning on texting Camille back, either. I just walked. Without thinking, my feet carried me toward Camille's gated neighborhood. The stone pillars, the keypad at the entrance, the blinking call box. I stood at the edge of it all. A security guard saw me from a booth and leaned into the mic. You here for Camille? I stood there for 3 seconds, then shook my head. No. I turned around. I wasn't here to beg. I wasn't even here to confront. I just needed to see it, to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it, that I really wasn't welcome. Maybe I never had been. I would never be the sister who stopped by unannounced, who got waved through the gate. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. The wind picked up as I walked back into town. My hands were cold, but I didn't shove them into my pockets. I wanted to feel it. By the time I reached the co-working space again, the dusk had settled. The girl at the front desk didn't ask for ID, just smiled and buzzed me in. Maybe she remembered me, or maybe she saw the look on my face and knew not to question it. I sat by the window and opened a blank document. Title, What I Paid For. I started typing. Not to rage, not to burn bridges, but to record it, line by line. Every mortgage, every tuition check, every quiet forgiveness. Every time I swallowed the urge to scream, this isn't fair. I wrote until my fingers ached. Then I formatted the email. BCC'd every cousin who ever asked for a loan. The church committee my mom always paraded me in front of. The investment club Dad introduced me to as our golden goose. And finally, Camille. At the very bottom I typed, You cannot disown someone you never truly welcomed, said. My hand hovered over the mouse. But I didn't hit send. Not yet. Because someone knocked on my motel door. The knock wasn't timid. It came with weight, 3 firm raps, then 2 more, like a rhythm carved from years of unsaid things. Years where I was told to keep quiet, keep giving, keep the peace. I stood still, not sure if I'd imagined it. Then I stepped to the door and looked through the peephole. There she was, my mother, standing under the flickering yellow hallway light, scarf soaked from the rain, her coat clinging to her frame like wet armor. She wasn't shivering. She wasn't sorry. She was furious. I cracked the door just enough to see her eyes, narrowed, tired, and cold. We need to talk now. I opened the door wide enough for her to enter, and she brushed past me like she owned the space. Her heels clicked on the thin motel carpet like a countdown. She turned to face me, arms crossed, purse clutched like it held the last ounce of control she had. You've created a disaster, she said, her voice sharp with accusation. Camille's mortgage is on hold. Your father, he can't show his face at church. People are whispering. He's humiliated. I stood still, letting it echo. She stepped closer. Do you even understand what you've done? And then she said it, the line that slid under my skin like ice. This isn't about the money. It's about how you've made us look. Not about pain, not about love. Optics. I blinked. That's what matters to you? She rolled her eyes. People talk. They assume things. I nodded slowly. Let them. She flinched, like I'd slapped her. The silence between us stretched thick and old, worn from years of being folded and reused, but never cleaned. I took a breath. For years, I said softly, I gave you everything you needed. Not because you asked kindly, but because I believed that, eventually, you'd see me. Not for what I gave, but for who I was. She said nothing. I've been funding appearances, I continued, not people. I shook my head. That stops now. She let out a short, bitter laugh. So what now? You want us to crawl? To beg? No, I replied. I want you to manage the way I always had to, alone, quietly, without thanks. Her face twisted. You think you're better than us? I looked her in the eye. No, I think I've finally stopped pretending I'm less. That hit. She picked up her purse like a gavel slamming down. You've changed. No, I said. I just finally stopped apologizing for not being Camille. Her hand hovered on the doorknob, pausing for half a second like she wanted to say something real, something vulnerable. But old habits die hard. She gave me one last look I couldn't decipher. Rage, maybe, or regret buried too deep to reach. And then she left. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood there for a moment, letting the stillness settle. I wasn't surprised. Not really. But something had shifted, hardened and softened all at once. I rinsed my face in the sink, grabbed my coat, and stepped back out into the night. The rain had slowed to a fine mist, soft and indifferent. Across the street, a neon diner sign buzzed gently. I walked toward it. Inside, the warmth hit immediately. Vinyl booths, old jazz drifting from the speaker, and a waitress who didn't ask questions. She just brought me coffee and a plate of pancakes I hadn't ordered, but I ate them anyway. The silence in that booth wasn't empty. It was kind. A silence that didn't expect anything from me, that didn't need me to explain or perform. When the check came, the waitress smiled and slid it across the table. It's been taken care of, she said, almost as an afterthought. A man paid for it before you walked in, left a note. She placed a folded napkin down next to my coffee cup. I opened it slowly, hands unsure. As you were never invisible. That's all it said. I looked up, startled, but the booth near the window was empty. Whoever it was, he was gone. Still holding the napkin, I pressed it into my coat pocket. It meant more than anything I'd heard from my family in 20 years. Back in my motel room, the air felt different. Not lighter, but mine. I opened my laptop and clicked through old accounts. There it was. An attempted withdrawal from the joint account I once, stupidly, shared with my mother. Denied. I reset every password, locked every door. Then I reopened the email I'd written the night before. The one blind copied to everyone who had ever seen me only as a wallet with legs. I read it once more, and then I hit send. By morning, the family group chat exploded. This time I didn't look away. By the time the sun crested the motel curtains, the family group chat had ignited like a dry field, set ablaze. It started with Camille. Her name lit up in bold letters. Camille. What the hell is wrong with you? Then Mom chimed in, sharp as ever. Mom, call me back immediately. Dad, as usual, was less words, more theater. Dad. Just 3 dots. That was his entire message. No reply after. Just the drama of silence. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, scrolling through their outrage the way you'd scroll through a weather report for a storm you already know is coming. And cold front incoming. Sure, I'd been living in it. Then my phone rang. Camille. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat. Her voice cracked immediately, teetering between fury and panic. You ruined everything, she said. The bank is refusing to extend the credit line. Mom hasn't stopped crying since last night. Dad canceled his meeting with the realtor. Do you even understand what you've done? I said nothing. Let her keep going. Let her fill the silence with the mess they made. You made us depend on you, she snapped. And then you just walked away like none of it mattered. That was the sentence that flipped the switch. I leaned back, the phone balanced between my cheek and shoulder. No, I said quietly, but firmly. You chose to depend on me. I never asked for that. You built your lives around my silence, not my consent. She went quiet. I could hear her breath on the line, shaky now, frustration melting into something raw. And then, like a dam cracking, she said it. I didn't have a choice, Kaylin. You had the credit. I needed the mortgage. You said you'd help. Suddenly, I was back there, 2 years ago. Camille picking me up from the airport, all smiles and sweetness, that extra edge of cheeriness that meant she was about to ask for something big. We're meeting with a real estate agent, she'd said casually, like we were grabbing lunch. I remembered pulling into the driveway of a spotless townhouse just outside Atlanta. Brick facade, neat hedges, a backyard so perfect it looked digitally rendered. She had turned to me in the car, her eyes wide with hope and calculation. Look, she'd said, I can cover the payments. I just need a cosigner, just to qualify. I'd hesitated. Something in my stomach nodded. Then Mom's voice piped in through speakerphone, clearly staged. Don't be selfish, she said. She's your sister. That sentence had always worked on me until it didn't, so I signed. I never lived there, never visited, but I paid the difference when Camille's freelance gigs dried up. And whenever I asked why Dad wasn't helping or what happened to her savings, I got the same brush off. It's complicated. No, it was simple. I was funding pride repackaged as crisis. Now back in that motel room, with Camille's voice still in my ear, I saw it for exactly what it was. You want me to fix it? I asked, calm. Long pause. She's having a breakdown, Camille said, her voice smaller now. Mom's doctor says her blood pressure. I cut her off. She's just now breaking down? After 6 years of me covering bills, sleeping in my car some nights, and being told I was the cold one, I didn't get a doctor. I didn't get to fall apart. I got ignored. Silence. Then a click. She hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand. The screen glowed for a second, then dimmed. Quiet again. I was halfway through brushing my teeth when the motel room phone rang. Not my cell. The old beige landline by the bed. I picked it up slowly, warily. Ms. Holt, said the voice at the front desk. There's a delivery for you. Envelope. Courier dropped it off 5 minutes ago. I blinked at my reflection in the mirror. I hadn't even showered yet. My towel was still draped across my shoulders. I'd planned to spend the morning in silence. Maybe nap. Maybe just be for a while. Instead, I threw on jeans, a hoodie, pulled my hair into a low bun, and headed downstairs. The envelope was thick, no return address, just my room number, written in slanted cursive. The clerk didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers. Back in my room, I sat on the bed and peeled it open. Inside were old insurance documents, crisp pages, my family's policy. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw the date, dated just after the fire. My name was typed cleanly on the beneficiary line, then crossed out. A new name had been scribbled in, Camille. Not even printed, just handwritten over the original, sloppy. I stared at it for a long time. My fingers traced where my name had been. So that was it. I hadn't just been abandoned after the fire. I'd been erased long before the flames touched the walls. The papers were yellowing around the edges, the kind you could smell, but it was the handwriting that gutted me. In slanted blue ink, my name had been the original. Then scratched out, one line, no ceremony. Beneath that, my father's signature. Not typed, not notarized. Just him and a pen, like he was correcting a grocery list. And Camille written in like a PS on a lie. I didn't shake, I didn't rage. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something quieter. Final. Like the sound a door makes when it clicks shut. And you know there's no key on your side. 2 years ago, I remembered there was a day, a small, forgettable day, or so I thought. Mom had handed me a red binder after a plumbing issue almost flooded their kitchen. She'd been unusually cheerful. Just in case anything happens, she said, pressing it into my hands like it was a homemade casserole, not a binder full of policies and legal paperwork. I'd offered to scan it, digitize everything, back it up. She'd smiled, waved me off. No need, we've got it sorted. I believed her. I thought maybe, just maybe, I was being trusted, included, counted. Turns out they'd already made other plans. Plans that didn't include me. I needed more than feelings now, more than the sting of betrayal or the ache of grief. I needed facts. By noon, I was pulling into a narrow parking space near the county records office, a squat beige building with peeling paint, buzzing fluorescent lights, and a slow ceiling fan that barely pushed air. I stepped inside and approached the clerk behind the glass window. Her nameplate read, Deborah. She looked like she'd seen every lie and every excuse. Hi, I said, voice calm. I need to request a copy of an insurance claim filed about 5 weeks ago. Residential fire, Linton Avenue. I believe I was on the policy. Deborah raised an eyebrow. Fire claims are sensitive, she said. Only listed beneficiaries or authorized agents can access them. I slid the document across the counter, the insurance page with my name crossed out. This came in the mail this morning. My name was originally listed. She took it, adjusted her glasses, and frowned, then disappeared into the back. 5 minutes passed, then 10. When she returned, she had a stapled set of documents in her hand and a crease between her brows. There was an amendment, she said, filed 3 weeks before the fire. Beneficiary was updated to a Camille Holt. She paused. You're not listed anywhere now. My voice came out even. That's all I needed to know. Thank you. I walked back to my car, closing the door gently. I sat behind the wheel for a full minute, unmoving. Palms resting on the steering wheel, staring ahead. It wasn't the silence that got me. It was the absence. Not just of sound, but of illusion, of hope. Halfway back to the motel, my phone buzzed. Camille. Her name lit up the screen like a warning light. I didn't answer, but the message came through anyway. And Camille, you're being cruel. We're family. You're overreacting. Overreacting. I should have laughed, but I didn't. I just kept driving, one hand tightening on the wheel. At the next intersection, I turned, not toward the motel, but toward the ruins, the lot where the house had once stood. It hadn't changed much since the fire. Boards still up, charred beams stacked like broken ribs. The smell was gone, but the weight lingered, like grief that had dried but never disappeared. I parked across the street and stepped out. No neighbors peeked through their curtains. No one tried to stop me. It was just me, the wind, and what used to be home. I stepped over the collapsed porch, careful not to disturb the wreckage. Burnt sofa springs poked up through ashes. A twisted floor lamp. A section of wall where our family photos used to hang. Then something glinted. Near the rubble, I knelt. A picture frame. Scorched at the edges, the glass cracked diagonally. Inside, a photo. Me and Mom. We were standing in front of the same house. I was 12, holding a watering can. Mom had her arm around me. The photo was browned, warped by heat. But our faces were still visible. And it hit me. Not just the betrayal, the policies, the crossed-out signatures, but this. Even the photo was left to burn. I stared at it a moment longer. Then I picked it up, brushed the soot away, held it tightly. No tears came. No screaming. Just silence. I turned and walked away. Left the ashes behind, for good this time. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I pulled into the motel lot. The sun was already starting to dip, painting everything in a dusky gold. I didn't feel triumphant. Just done. Inside, I tossed my keys onto the nightstand and pulled out the old laptop from under the bed. The hinge creaked the same way it always had. The screen flickered on, and there it was, the familiar folder. And family expenses. I clicked open the spreadsheet. Every line. Every check I'd written. Every online transfer. Groceries when they didn't ask but expected. Rent when the pension check was late. School fees for Camille's son when they decided public school wasn't an option. Gas cards, holiday dinners, cell phone bills, all of it. All logged. Dates, amounts, notes. A part of me had kept it for tax reasons. Another part, maybe out of desperation. To prove that I was worth something. $143,770.58. I said the number out loud. It didn't echo, but it landed heavy in the room. Then I opened my banking app. By the time the sun had dipped fully below the horizon, I was parked outside the old brick building that housed my family's credit union. The same one my parents had opened our first joint account in when I was 19 and still believed promises meant permanence. Inside, the AC hit cold and sharp. A bank manager, mid-50s, met me behind the glass partition. I'd like to freeze and close all accounts associated with these routing and linked numbers, I said, sliding the papers across the desk. He flipped through them, his brow furrowing. These are joint accounts, with your mother, sister. Yes, I said calmly. And here's the documentation. You'll see patterns of unauthorized withdrawals, inconsistent signatures, and 3 wire transfers in my name without consent. He didn't ask if I was sure. 10 minutes later, he returned. It's done, he said. All outgoing transactions halted. Credit lines frozen. Any linked cards will be declined. I gave him a nod. Thank you. Outside, I passed a young couple arguing in the ATM line. I didn't stop. I didn't feel guilty. For once, I didn't feel anything but focused. Back in the car, I opened my laptop again. Scrolled to a highlighted line. April 22nd. Wire to Camille. 4,000. Note, Tyrone lost job. I remembered that night. Camille sobbing on the phone, saying they'd lose the house, saying it was urgent. I'd skipped dinner, sent the transfer, ate cereal for 3 days. Paid rent late. Now I hovered the cursor over that line and clicked, delete row, gone. My phone buzzed. And Kaylin, it's Armand. My attorney, always straight to the point. No greetings, no pleasantries. Just a heads up, he said. Camille and her husband filed a countersuit. I rubbed my temple. Let me guess. Wrongful abandonment? Bingo, emotional distress, financial disruption, all the usual complaints. You know, the same burdens they had no problem dumping on your shoulders for 6 years. I let out a quiet laugh. Let them try explaining to a judge how the abandoned daughter paid off their back taxes and funded their kitchen remodel. He chuckled. Exactly. I'm not worried, but I thought you should know. Thanks, I said. Keep me posted. I ended the call and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. The sky outside was dimming, wind picking up. I'd stopped at a small cafe for tea and checked into a new motel. Cleaner, quieter, a little more permanent, though I wasn't sure what permanent even meant anymore. As the kettle hissed, my phone vibrated once, twice, then wouldn't stop. I glanced at the screen. 14 missed calls. Then 23N. Then 3019. Like a dam had broken, and everyone behind it was scrambling for buckets. Camille, Tyrone, Mom, even Uncle Don. Voicemails poured in one after another. I let them go straight to inbox. Then curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. At Camille. Kaylin, what are you doing? I just tried to get groceries and the card didn't work. Call me back. Next one. And Mom, your mother's account is frozen. What is happening? Are you punishing us? Then one from Camille again, her voice sharper. You can't do this. You owe us. After everything we've done for you. I stared at the motel wall, expression blank, then turned the phone off. I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. But I did owe someone. Me. I stepped away from the buzzing phone and let silence settle in the room like dust. The sun dipped behind the stained blinds. My palms were still warm from gripping the last voicemail, but inside I felt cold. Not numb, just steady. Not angry, just done. That night I barely slept. Not because of restlessness, but because my brain was sorting through years of mess like an attic full of boxes finally being cleared out. At 6:30 a.m. I pushed off the covers, brewed motel coffee, burnt, bitter, thin, and opened my laptop again. There was one last thing I needed to see. The fire report. It had finally gone public. I opened the fire department database, typed the address I knew by heart, and pulled up the incident report. My pulse didn't even spike. It wasn't faulty wiring like Camille told everyone. Wasn't a mysterious freak accident like Mom liked to imply. It was a space heater, left running, in Camille's old room. They never told me. They let me believe I'd neglected something, that I'd walked away from a house that needed me, that I should have been around more. They buried the truth, the same way they tried to bury me. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. The air felt cleaner than it should have, like it had just rained, though it hadn't. And I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. The day I moved into that house. 10 years ago, almost to the week. No party, no cake, just me and some plastic tubs in the back of a used sedan. I'd just graduated from community college. I was grateful, hopeful. I remember painting the walls of the little side room myself, pale green, the color of fresh leaves, new beginnings. I'd set up a desk next to the window, right beside the heater. The same heater. The one they said they'd replace. We'll get to it next month, Mom said, tying her hair back with a rubber band as she walked by the door. She never looked up from her phone. They never replaced it. Winter came. I added blankets. Summer came. I stopped using the room because it was too hot. But I never complained. That heater, the one that burned the house down, they never even mentioned it. They just let me carry the weight, as if it were mine. I dressed slowly, nothing special. Just jeans and a clean shirt. I tucked the printout of my family expense spreadsheet into my bag. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to go. I ended up at the public library again. The walk was short, air crisp, kind. Inside, the archivist at the front desk looked up and smiled. Hi, I said. I'm looking for any local news stories from 7 months ago. There was a house fire, Maple Drive. She nodded and disappeared behind a row of shelves. A few minutes later, she slid a manila folder across the table. I opened it carefully, and there it was. A full-page story from the local paper. Local family displaced. Eldest daughter to the rescue. The headline hit me like a slap. Camille had set up a GoFundMe. Raised $22,000 in 3 days. The article was glowing, pitying, heroic. There were photos. Camille, Mom, Dad, all standing in front of the charred porch, arms around each other like survivors of a war. But I wasn't in it. Not once. Not even a footnote. I read it twice, just to be sure. It was like someone had gone in with a red pen and crossed me out of the narrative completely. Not dead. Not missing. Just deleted, I whispered to myself, barely louder than a breath. I didn't just walk away. They erased me. I don't know how long I sat there. But when I stood, my back ached, my chest was tight. But not from hurt. From clarity. Instead of heading back to the motel, I drove straight to the cemetery. The grass was overgrown, but I found her easily, my maternal grandmother, Delmare. The only one who ever made me feel like I wasn't a burden. When I was 12 and Camille got the flu, it was Grandma who stayed up with me all night to finish my science fair volcano. She told me my mind was worth protecting, that people would try to convince me otherwise. I knelt beside her stone and stayed for a long while. I know you'd say not to fight fire with fire, I whispered, but you'd also say, don't let them burn your name for warmth, baby. I pulled out an old photo from my wallet, one I'd kept hidden for years. It was me and Grandma at the zoo. She had cotton candy on her cheek. I was laughing, gap-toothed, unfiltered joy. I sealed the photo in a plastic slip and taped it to the back of her marker. A small act, but it felt like closing a door without slamming it. As the afternoon light faded, I drove to a beige building off the main road. Red door, second floor, no elevator. But it was mine. I unlocked the apartment. It was bare. White walls, a chipped kitchen counter, a single window. But it smelled clean, like possibility. I placed my bag on the table and pulled out the spreadsheet. All the dollars I'd spent. All the lies I mistook for love. I scribbled a new title on the top. A proof of love. Standing there in that quiet room with only a single bag and my name on the lease, I knew love without respect isn't love at all. It's just debt in disguise. I was folding the last of my towels, still warm from the dryer, when I heard it. 3 knocks. Firm, precise, then a pause and 2 more. I froze, not because I was afraid, but because I knew. I looked through the peephole. Camille. No dramatic eyeliner, no gold hoops. Her hair was tied back in a limp ponytail, and her shoulders slumped like they'd been carrying the weight of too many half-truths. She looked older, tight around the mouth like she'd been biting back words for days. I cracked the door but didn't step back. We locked eyes. We need to talk, she said. I didn't say yes. I just grabbed my keys and jacket, locked the door behind me, and walked beside her to the small cafe around the corner. Not the kind with menus or waitstaff, just a counter, chipped tables, and coffee that tasted like smoke and sugar. I nodded at the barista and slid into a booth by the window. Camille sat across from me, folding her hands together so tightly her knuckles paled. Mom's losing it, she said, staring at the sugar jar. She's convinced you're out to destroy her. Dad won't talk to anyone, just sits there, staring at the garage door like you'll walk in any minute. I stirred my coffee slowly. Let the silence do the work. They think you're punishing them, she continued. But the truth is, she swallowed. You were the glue. You were the only one keeping things together, and we kicked you out like a stray dog. I met her eyes. I know. She blinked, looked down, then said it. Do you want us to beg? Silence. She pressed her palms to the table like she was trying to steady herself. I'm begging, please, just help, one more time. I set my coffee down. The clink was sharper than I expected. No. Camille froze. I didn't raise my voice, didn't move, because it was never one more time. It was always the next time, I said, and the one after that. You don't see me, you just see what I can give. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Just a shallow breath, and the shine of tears she refused to let fall. We paid separately. I walked ahead as we left. No goodbye. 3 nights earlier, I'd written a letter. One I never intended to send. I'd been sitting on the floor of my new apartment, wrapped in a blanket, a metal mixing bowl beside me, a box of matches. The letter was simple. No accusations, no pleas. Just truth. I loved you enough to carry everyone, I wrote. Now I love myself enough to let go. I folded it, lit a match. Watched the flame curl the paper until the words collapsed into ash. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like sweeping the last soot from a windowsill. Back at the cafe, a young woman in a brown apron brought over my receipt. She looked barely 25, freckles across her cheeks. You have a calm way of speaking, she said quietly. I wish I had that strength. I smiled, just a little. I didn't have it, I replied. I built it. She nodded like she understood, then turned to clear a nearby table. I left a generous tip and stepped outside. The afternoon light had softened to gold, filtering through the trees like the world was exhaling. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail. From Mom. I didn't hesitate. Ad deleted. No guilt. The walk back to my apartment was quiet. Just the hum of cars and the rustle of dry leaves. On my kitchen counter sat a white envelope I hadn't opened yet. From the nonprofit I'd applied to a few weeks back when I still wasn't sure I had anything left to give. I opened it slowly. And dear Kaylin, we're thrilled to welcome you as our newest financial literacy mentor. Your experience and insight will help women regain control of their futures. I stood there motionless, hands resting on the edge of the counter. The apartment was modest. Secondhand furniture, soft light spilling through the single window, one potted plant I hadn't managed to kill. But it was mine. I tucked the letter into a folder labeled "Start Here," then walked to the center of the room. There were no framed degrees, no family portraits, just peace, a quiet hum of peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next knock, the next fire, the next emergency that had my name on the bill and someone else on the deed. And if a knock came, I might answer. But I wouldn't hand over my peace. Not again. Not for guilt. Not for blood. Not even for memory. I didn't walk away bitter. I walked away whole. The final knock came on a Tuesday morning. Not loud, not aggressive. Just a soft, steady rhythm that echoed through my small apartment like a ripple in a still pond. I took my time answering it. I'd been slicing apples for breakfast, the sun warming my bare feet through the kitchen window. A playlist hummed softly in the background, old jazz and light piano. I dried my hands, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. Dad. I hadn't seen him in person since the fire. He looked smaller. His shoulders had rounded, the sharpness in his jaw now softened by age, or maybe regret. He held his hat in his hands like he wasn't sure what to do with them. I opened the door but didn't step aside. He didn't ask to come in. Just stood there for a moment before saying, "I thought I'd lost you." "You did," I said. Not cold, not cruel, just honest. His throat moved like he was trying to swallow something heavy. "I wanted to protect what little we had left," he said. "But somewhere along the line, we started protecting the lie." I raised an eyebrow. "The lie that I was strong enough to carry everyone?" He winced. "I didn't know about the insurance change," he said quickly, desperate to get ahead of it. "Your mother, she said it was just temporary, just until Camille could... I don't know. You signed it?" He looked down at the floor. "Yeah," he whispered. "I did." There was a long silence. I watched him shift, uncomfortable in a way I hadn't seen since I was a kid, and caught him crying in the garage once, holding an overdue bill in one hand and a wrench in the other. "I came to give you something," he said finally, pulling an envelope from inside his jacket. "It's not much, but it's yours. It always should have been." I didn't take it, not yet. "What is it?" He held it out, eyes still cast downward. "Grandma Delmare left something for you, in her will. Your mother kept it from you, said you were too busy, too distant, but I found it when I was going through her things last week." I reached out and took the envelope. Inside was a letter, yellowed, folded neatly. My name written on the front in delicate script I'd recognize anywhere. I didn't read it right then. I just held it in my hand like a thread to someone who had always seen me. "She loved you," Dad said, "more than any of us really knew how to show." He stepped back then, like he knew he wasn't welcome past the threshold. "I don't expect you to forgive us," he said, "but I hope someday you'll find peace." "I already did," I said softly. He nodded once, and walked away. I closed the door gently and leaned my forehead against the wood. Not out of sorrow, but because it was over. Really over. Not the pain, not the past, but the grip it had on me. I made tea and sat at the little table by the window, slowly unfolding the letter. It was short. "My dearest Kaylin, I see you. I've always seen you. When the world calls you cold, I know better. Your fire, quiet, enduring, impossible to put out. They may not understand you, but that doesn't make you wrong. That makes you rare. Protect your peace, baby, even from the people who call it love, especially from them. All my love, Grandma Delmare." Tears welled, but didn't fall. I folded the letter back along its creases and placed it inside the folder with the nonprofit welcome packet. Later that week, I sat in my new office, bare walls, secondhand desk, and a corkboard with just one note pinned to it. "You were never invisible." A reminder. That it hadn't been in vain. That I hadn't been erased. That the version of me they ignored, the one who gave, who worked, who kept folding napkins into maple leaves even when no one said thank you, that version was never broken. She just needed to stop giving everything away. That weekend, I met my first mentee. A woman in her 40s, single mom, 2 jobs, drowning in debt she didn't create, eyes filled with shame. We sat together at a round table with worksheets and highlighters. I listened. I nodded. And when she said, "I don't even know where to begin," I smiled gently and said, "You already have. Later that evening, walking home, I passed by a park bench where two kids were laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. Their mother sat nearby, rubbing her temples, smiling anyway. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Not because someone had come back to claim me, but because I had chosen myself. Chosen truth over performance. Peace over obligation. Boundaries over guilt. Chosen to begin again, not as the person who could save everyone, but as the person who finally saved herself. And that was enough. It always had been.